Hey, so aside from having to shovel my driveway a couple of times, I'm doing exactly what I want to do on my birthday any given year, and that's just sitting around listening to records. Um, and it's more fun when there's other people to share your listening with. But given that we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic, that's a little harder to do these days. So I thought maybe I would just at least tell you what I'm kind of into from purchases that I've made over the last week or two, and things that I'll be listening to today and in the coming weeks. In case any of you have any questions about any of this music, feel free to reach out to me. But hopefully, maybe some of these things sound interesting to you, and you'll try to track them down either in a shop or on streaming services or something. The first one is actually what we're listening to in the background. This is Steve Hillage's, I believe, 5th studio album. He was the lead guitar player in Gong for their sort of most famous, best work. This particular record doesn't have any drums on it. The first couple of his records were sort of in the Gong mold, which is to say very psychedelic, sort of proggy, world music oriented stuff. A little less world music from Steve than from Gong itself, but he's an amazing guitarist, so he's one of my favorites. I've never heard this record before, but like I said, this one's a cool one because there's no drums or rhythm section on it. It's sort of like one of the first early ambient kind of records, from a rock person at least. Steve would later go on to get involved in a lot of electronic dance music. He was sort of like a godfather of a lot of that stuff, but this is where the sort of ambient stuff, the chill out stuff sort of starts with, and that's what we're listening to in the background. You can probably not hear it very well, but it's an awesome record. I've listened to it once already, and this is the second time, and I'm really enjoying it. This record by Edmundo Ros, I picked this one up like the Steve Hillage record at Station 1 Vinyl in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. Amazing shop, super nice guys who work there, great prices, cool selection. I get there whenever I can and try to give them a shout out. But this is called Rhythms of the South. It's, I'm not sure what year it's from, maybe the mid 50s. Apparently this guy, Edmundo Ros, was like the shit back in the day. He was born in Tahiti, but he left for Venezuela after his mother apparently married some dude who he couldn't stand. He fled home, but he was a musical sort of a young musical genius and ended up going to conservatories, etc., etc. And he ended up in England, and he led this super popular dance band. Latin rhythms were really popular in the 50s and 60s. In England as well. He ended up owning a very successful nightclub, played for the Queen a couple of times. He was, like I said, he was apparently a big deal at the time. I haven't listened to this yet, but this sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. This is an album by Beaver and Krause, who were an early electronic duo. I believe they worked for the Moog company right from the beginning. They were salesmen very early on for Bob Moog. And they put out all these crazy electronic records that were like some of the first, if not the first, to feature Moog keyboards on them and synthesizers and stuff. They worked with the Monkees and a lot of rock people and a lot of movie soundtracks. This record called Gandharva looks really interesting. It's also got a lot of jazz and rock guys on it. So I haven't listened to this one yet, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what this sounds like. Another sort of psychedelic 60s record. You'll pick up on a theme here, as you usually will with me. I'll pretty much buy anything from 1967 or thereabouts, but this one looks really interesting. This is Gary Burton Quartet. Gary Burton is a vibes player, big into education, but was also a very early fusion guy who pioneered a certain kind of 4-mallet technique, whereas most people up to a certain point were using 2-mallet technique. Melodic percussionists will know a lot more than I will about that, but this is a 1968 live album recorded at Carnegie Hall, and on it are a couple of super heavyweights. Larry Coryell on guitar, Steve Swallow on bass, and the great Bob Moses, the great Rockalam Bob Moses, who's still alive and well and living in upstate New York. Who wrote a wonderful drum tutorial called Drum Wisdom. See if you can find a copy of that somewhere, but very much looking forward to listening to this one. Here's an interesting record called Symphony of the Birds. I just did an interview with Susie Ibarra, who a drummer, composer, who she and I were talking about bird songs. She's started really getting deep into studying bird songs. This record, I'm not sure what year this was from, probably the early 60s. This guy, Jim Fassett, he was a bigwig at, he was a musical director at CBS Radio, and was involved in all sorts of experimental sounds, I guess, at the time as well. So what he did was he recorded, or had somebody else record, bird songs, and he took those tapes and created melodies off of the bird songs, and apparently this is a full sort of symphony based on bird song. So I'm really looking forward to that, and sharing it with Susie at some point. Here's a record called Sound Blast by Ferrante and Teicher, who were a piano duo, if I understand that correctly. Yes, a piano duo. You'd see their record. You see the records in the cutout bins a lot. They were doing sort of light orchestral versions of the hits of the day. They had tons and tons of records. They were very, very popular. And like many people in the 50s and 60s, they were fascinated with space travel. So you'll see a ton of records from this era, sort of playing off of the idea of space travel and all kinds of things. This is the Sound of Tomorrow today, apparently, and then today was the mid-50s, I guess. Stereo test records. Anybody who is into stereos or was into stereos back in the day, they would put out these albums basically to put on your stereo to test that your stereo was performing up to task. I've never used one for practical purposes. This particular one comes with instructions, which are always fun. Lots of scientific jargon that I would know nothing about, but I'm a sucker for this stuff anyway. This even has the original wrapping on it, so the artwork, which is, as you can tell, is pretty freaking awesome, is super clean. This, like the other records before, all came from Station 1 vinyl, so like I said, go check those guys out. Yeah, that's that one. This record is the most amazing record you've possibly never heard. It's called Eskimo. It's from a band called the Residents. Yes, they are wearing eyeballs on their heads. That was their thing. They didn't want you to know who they were. They were sort of embraced by freaks everywhere since the early 70s. Every one of their records is out of control great. It's hard to even put it in the rock world, though I think rock and roll people were probably their biggest followers. But this one claims to be authentic Eskimo music. It is not. It is anything but that doesn't make it any worse. As a matter of fact, it makes it that much more amazing. They knew what they were doing. They were basically, everything they did was tongue-in-cheek to a certain extent, but at the same time super sincere in terms of how into it they were. They were not messing around, and this music is just listen to it. It'll change your world. This is a record I bought. I'm having trouble remembering where I bought it. I'm sorry, but the important thing is that cover art. I've already done a post somewhere else about this record. I don't know what that effect is called, but it is basically another sort of 60s, 50s. This is from 1960. Motion and percussion, an audio-visual stereophonic experiment in motion reaction. So yeah, exactly. But the, all top flight people, this was the Hollywood Pops Orchestra, and the percussionists on here are Irv Kotler, who I believe played with Sinatra for a long time, Larry Bunker, Dale Anderson, Gene Estes, and Hubert Anderson, all top guys from the LA studio scene at the time. And I listened to a bit of it. It's pretty much exactly what you would think, but heavy on the percussion. Just a lot of really cool, sort of high level, golden age of recording pops music from the 60s. And if nothing else, come on, look at that. This is just ridiculous. I bought this at, I believe I bought this at Station 1 Photographer's Gallery of Music and Sound. Basically sound effects, which are, you know, sound effects at this point are as close as, you know, Spotify at this point if you're looking for that, or many libraries of sound effects that you can buy. But before all that, before the computer, you used to have to buy a record to get that sort of stuff. So that this is actually volumes 1 to 5, I believe. There's 5 albums in here. Yep. Oh, and lucky us, more directions how to deal with these things. Yeah, Latin vistas, calypso melodies. So you've got some melodies, but you've also got sounds like typing, waterfall, telephone ringing. Doesn't get any better than that. And I believe it was like $10 for 5 records. So Be Bop Deluxe, amazing band from the 70s. You could call them a prog band, you know, on the poppier or rockier side of prog. This is a live album, maybe their 4th album, contains songs from their previous records. The cool thing about this record is it's called Live in the Air Age, which is a takeoff on one of their songs called Life in the Air Age. But I don't know if you can see this. Yes, you can. White vinyl. This is actually it's a double album. Well, it's an album and an EP. It was still of the time when you would put on double albums, you would put side 1 and 4 on one record and 2 and 3 on the other record. This one, because the white vinyl is an EP with only a couple songs on a side, and the album is an LP, they actually divided, well, the EP is 2 and 3, and the album is 1 and 4. So, you know, anyway, lots of amazing songs. Bill Nelson was the leader of Be Bop Deluxe, fantastic guitarist who would later become sort of a new wave icon, and just produced tons and tons of records, including a couple others that I got. These records actually, these Bill Nelson records that I'm about to show you, and the Be Bop Deluxe, I got at Angry Mom Records up in Ithaca, New York. We took a trip up there recently, and I dropped a few bucks there. This is his Bill Nelson's first solo record called Red Noise. Trying to think of who it might be sort of close to. Not a whole lot of people. He produced the first Flock of Seagulls record. There are definitely parallels there to what Red Noise sounds like and the Bill Nelson solo stuff. There's a lot of ambient stuff, but a lot of great guitar solos for people who are into shredding. Here's another one. Like many of his solo records, the titles are just awesome. This one's called The Twofold Aspect of Everything. I believe this is a double. Yes, it is a double. And a wonderful cover, which is repeated in the liner notes. I look forward to listening to that one. I haven't listened to that one yet. This one is a soundtrack to a movie called Joe. You may be familiar with Joe. It stars Peter Boyle, who you can see there. Maybe you're familiar with him from Seinfeld or from Young Frankenstein, having played the monster. One of the funniest guys on the planet ever. This is a less funny role. It's sort of a 60s anti-hippie kind of movie in a way. I haven't watched it in about 20 years, so maybe I got that wrong, but Joe becomes an enemy to the hippies and then gets sort of sucked in for a minute or two in the movie, and all kinds of badness ensues. It's Susan Sarandon's first role, apparently, which is kind of cool. But check out the movie. The songs are performed by Jerry Butler and Exuma. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm guessing it's sort of funky cop movie, soul, 60s music with orchestration. That's my guess. I'll let you know. And this last LP is by a guitarist named Robbie Basho. It's reflecting because I haven't unwrapped it yet. I bought this online the other day. Robbie Basho was an acoustic guitarist. He was an American acoustic guitarist, sort of in the mold of John Fahey and Leo Kottke, who he was also, I believe, sort of in league with. The cool thing about Robbie Basho, besides being just an amazing technician, was he was very early proponent of world music. So there's a lot of Indian raga elements to the music. There's even some vocals, I believe. This is a live show with a really kind of a horrible photo on the cover, but I don't think that reflects the quality of the music inside. I'm really looking forward to listening to this. That's going to be a pretty awesome thing. And 1 second. sorry about that. A couple CDs I bought. I still love CDs. I still listen to them. I still find them, and a lot of the great part about CDs that you don't get even with LPs is that in the in the 90s they really went to town as far as doing the research on the music, and oftentimes there's just phenomenal liner notes that you really can't get anywhere else. This one I got from Station 1. It's called Heavy Sugar. It is a 3-disc set, the pure essence of New Orleans R&B with people like who's on here, Little Richard, Fats Domino, just things like that. I believe there's a little Professor Longhair on here. I'm not sure about that, but 3 CDs. This is going to be just absolutely a regular part of my listening. I don't have to say much more about it. I think it looks like it's really well put together and researched, so I'm looking forward to that. And last but not least, this is a CD by Milford Graves. If you've been paying attention maybe to some of the music press in the last week or two, he recently passed. Milford was a drummer, teacher, philosopher, herbalist, amazing human being who was really important to tons and tons of people on the sort of independent jazz avant-garde scene. Like I said, he recently passed. This is an early album called Milford Graves Percussion Ensemble with Sonny Morgan. I'm super looking forward to listening to this. I just bought this online from ESP Disc, directly from there, I believe from the Bandcamp page. So anyway, go check out Milton Graves if you haven't already. At the very least, sort of do a little research and read about him, because he's a really important guy who just recently left us. Anyway, hope you enjoyed some of that geeking out on my current listening to list. I'll catch you on the other side and let you know whether all of these records are all I think they are. All right, hope you're well, and see you soon.